Hello everyone and welcome to our EBEX webinar on Excel Basics. I'm going to introduce Will Labrie, who is a application consultant here at EBEX. EBEX is a total Microsoft provider and we specialize in BI, CRM, as well as Dynamics AX. Today's topic, Excel Basics, will go over some of the general Excel functionalities that you as a person in the workforce should know using Excel, such as Vlookups, freeze panes, document management, and data manipulation. So without further ado, Will, let's get started.
My name is Will Labrie, and I'm going to be the one giving this webinar today. I currently work as an application consultant with Microsoft Dynamics AX. I sort of split my time between a technical role and a functional role with AX, and use Excel quite a bit because I try to stay away from SQL. I'm not too much of a developer, especially with SQL, but I do like working with data, and I use Excel to do that. Before we go ahead and get started, I'm going to let you know that everyone right now is on mute. But you do have the ability to ask questions. There's a questions portion in the GoToWebinar app. So this is first and foremost for you. If you have questions, if I'm covering something that's a little too slow and you want me to speed up or cover something else, or even if you have very specific questions that you're working on a document and want to know how to do something, go ahead and ask that question. I'll be glad to answer it. That way we both get the most out of this. Okay. Like I said, I work for EBEX, and we are a total Microsoft Business Solution partner. We focus in the ERP, CRM, and BI spaces. We have been the Microsoft Dynamics Reseller of the Year quite a few years. And we do offer the full stack, like I said, BI solutions, ERP, and CRM. So if you have any of those needs, let us know, and we'd be happy to help you out. So Excel really doesn't lend itself very well to PowerPoint. I think the best way to teach it is to just open up Excel. So I've got a couple of slides here. They're really just going to be what I'm going to discuss today. The first thing we're going to work on is making the document easier to use. Easier to use, a little prettier. A lot of people do different types of reporting in Excel, and just being able to print out a report out of Excel that looks a little more professional. You can sort of trick people into thinking they were using a different tool when you're just using Excel. So we're going to look at how the printer's set up, page layout, things like that, how to navigate a little bit easier with some shortcuts, and use some freeze panes to just change the formatting of the document. After that, we're going to get into some formulas. I call these sort of the intermediate formulas. The basic might be a very simple sum, a couple cells, and things like that. So going under the assumption that most of you use Excel, maybe use some of those formulas, but you want to take it to that next step where you're using things like a Vlookup, which is a very powerful tool, but it's fairly straightforward and simple to use as well. We can do some if statements. These are usually people's first step into programming. So you've got your if statements, and we can nest those together. So we can do nested if thens. And if we want to take it much further than that, we can look at using macros, but I'm actually giving another webinar on that. So that would be for a later date and time. And we'll look at using named ranges. These are something that are often overlooked, but they do provide some nice functionality. All right, then we'll look at sort of viewing data within Excel. So a lot of the times you have an ERP or CRM type system. You've got data in there, and you can put that into Excel, but you may want to slice and dice it a little bit. And we'll use some pivot tables and possibly, if we have time, get into some additional formatting to make the data look a little prettier and easier to view. All right, so those are really the three main areas that I'm going to try to cover today. If anybody wants something different covered or would like me to skip over some of this, let me know. Just type in a question right now. So with that being said, I'm going to go ahead and open Excel. Try and move my little GoToWebinar. Okay. So what I have here, I've got a document, and this is just sort of a a sales list out of an ERP system. So a lot of could be any system. This was AX, and I went ahead and sort of added a fake sales amount and a sales date, so we can do some later data manipulation on that. So one of the first things that we're going to do is set up freeze panes. So if I go ahead and select the second row, you don't have to do it with just the first row, and go to my View tab up top, I'm actually able to freeze this top row. And so what that's going to do is when I scroll up and down the data, it's going to fix that first row. So if you've got a bunch of different prices or dates and you're not sure which is which, being able to scroll through the data and have your header still available can be nice. You can do columns as well. So if we do this, we can freeze our first column. And so that sales order number is going to stay there as well. So this can be nice, especially if you've got a large data set with a lot of columns. You're able to scan through your data fairly easily. And to turn it off, we can unfreeze panes. So one of the things I'm going to show you now is a shortcut. And you can't see my keyboard, but I'm going to tell you what I'm clicking. And it's Control-Shift and then my arrow keys. And what that's going to do is highlight to the next empty cell. So if I'm on A and I do that, it's going to select all the columns. I can do the same thing and go Control-Shift down, and that's going to allow me to select all of my data. So this can be nice with big column with big documents, being able to select them all very quickly. Something like a sales amount, I could select them all very quickly and see down on the bottom I've got a sum and an average. So we've got an average sales price of $1,024 and a sum of $777,000. So we've probably seen a lot of reports like this, sort of a tabular data model. And we'd like to be able to print this out and have it look a little bit better. So if we look at our preview now, it's multiple pages wide, and it's just not very user-friendly or pretty. So one of the first things I like to do is I almost always set my page width to 1. Very rarely print documents that are wider than 1 page. There's different ways you can set this up. The way I do it is usually just select my width right here. I change my width to 1 page. You have different views where you can drag so this is our page break view. And you can drag these lines across and select how many pages wide or tall the document's going to be. Go back to my normal view. Interestingly, so I'm going to select my data and set my width to 1 page. So we can see the first thing we've done is we've made it now, at least it's just 1 page wide. Okay. Another thing I like to do when I'm trying to print documents is usually your first page might be a little bit different. We can have logos, titles, different things like that. So I'm going to go ahead and insert a row. Do that twice. I have 2 rows above my my actual data for the report. So we could put in a report title here. Make it a little bit bigger. Or we could use sort of these prefix and change it to a header type. So we want this to merge across, so I'm able to merge these cells so they have the same formatting. And I could enter a function like today, and this will return the date of the report. I can change this to a header as well. And change the alignment, so this will align to the left. What I'll do next is put a nice logo here. So I'll put the EBEX logo on the picture and on the document. So I wouldn't say this is quite pretty yet, but you can sort of start to see what we're going for here. Change that so it would select all the information to print. The way we can do it here is we can go ahead and set our print area. So we can clear it or set it. If we clear it, it's going to, by default, select all the information. The other thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take this information right here and go ahead and format this as a table. So I use my Control-Shift selections and I'm going to format this as a table. It's going to have alternating rows. Let it know that it has headers. Now we've got a table within our report. Go ahead and shrink this a little bit. All right, I'll go over to look at my print preview. We're getting there. It definitely looks better. So let's, just like we did freeze panes, which now is a good time to show again. We'll want to freeze this third row now. So what we're going to do is select the 4th row, and then when we go to our View tab, and we freeze panes, it's going to stop at the 3rd row. So you select the row below the row that you would like to freeze. So just like we have this header is always available, we'd probably also like to have it so that the header prints out on every page. So we can go to our page layout and we'll go to our print tiles functionality. And what we can do here is we can choose our rows to repeat at the top. So we're just going to choose the 3rd row. So what that's going to allow is the header information to appear on the first page, but just the column headers to appear on the other pages. And one more thing what I like to do is at least put page numbers at the bottom. So when I'm printing this, I can go back to my print tiles functionality and go to my footer. You're allowed to have footers at the end of each document. You can choose one that's built in, or you can use a custom footer. So do Excel webinar report. And so now this is going to appear at the bottom of every page. One more thing we might like to do with this is have its orientation be landscape. This is a fairly wide amount of data. And so now when I go to print preview this, I'm using Control P to bring this up, by the way. This looks quite a bit better. You could use some colors that are more in line with what your company logo looks like. Maybe change the font a little bit on this header that the report is on. But you can see when a simple list of information like this, sending this out, saving this as a PDF, someone's document it definitely looks a lot more professional than it did before. The document is definitely easier to use. We've got our freeze panes. The information's frozen at the top. Now we can sort of scroll down and it's frozen there. So that's really sort of an overview of how to change the formatting a little bit, how to do some little tips and tricks to make the document look a little more professional. All right, so if anybody has any questions, or maybe you have an idea of something that you like to use, or any questions in general about this. So this was the sort of formatting section. And after this, I'm going to step into some of the functions that are a little bit more complex than a simple sum. And I think the first one we could do, because not a lot of people know about it, is a subtotal report or a subtotal function. So if I've got my sales amount here, and I do equals the subtotal, and sum, which is 9. And I do, what's it, J4 to J762. And we'll show later how you can actually avoid using some of these cell references and use named ranges, which are a little nicer to use. So we've got our subtotal here at the bottom, which if we remember from earlier in the document, when I selected all the values, it added up to 777. What's nice about subtotal is that if we filter this data, that's going to update as well. So we can see that the subtotal function now updates based on the filtering criteria we've applied. So let's see if we can. So we've got this small subsample of data, and we've got a nice subtotal at the bottom as opposed to total, which isn't going to update. So we'll start with some Vlookup functions. We'll go ahead and use the same data set actually. So it's a little larger and easier to use. What we can do here is we'll assume this customer name field didn't exist. A lot of systems, or I don't know about a lot, but AX sort of it denormalizes and it keeps the name separate from the account number. So I'll make use our and I'm going to go ahead and just this function called remove duplicates. So right now what we have is we've got every customer account and the name associated with that account. So if I go back to my sheet and I insert a column in this, just do it right here. Customer name. So we're going to use Vlookup to look up the customer name. So we're going to assume that this doesn't exist, and we would need to look up the name based on this account number. So Vlookup. So the lookup value is going to be the value that we are looking up. So we want to look up the account number, which is right now located in cell B4. The table array, this is your table of information that has the value that you're looking up. So I'm going to go to my new sheet and select the table or the columns that have the values. The important thing to note is the value you're looking up, so that customer account in this case, always has to be the leftmost column. And then the column that you're reporting, you need to keep track of as well. So the easy way to do that is if you look next to my mouse, it says X2C. That means I'm on the second column. And so it's going to be it's easy to count when you've got 2. But if you've got 10 or 15 columns, it may be tricky to, it may take time to actually count all those columns. So we're going to keep an eye on that number 2. So we've selected our data, which is from sheet 3, and we're selecting all of columns A and B. There's different ways you can do that with just tables, but for simplicity, we'll do the entire, or both columns. So my column index number, that's that 2 I was talking about. That's the column that you're reporting back. So when I look up that account, DE-001, I'm going to report back what's in column 2, which would be Contosa Europe. And then there's this fourth value that the function is calling for. And this is your range lookup. It is either true or false. True is when you're trying to get the closest possible. So that would be for something like pricing, where you're trying to get the closest possible price. In this example, we're trying to find the exact account number. So in that case, it's going to be false. We're looking for an exact match. Go ahead and close my parentheses and press enter, and it's looked up all the customer names. So we could read through that function for cell number 2, row number 5, second one. Vlookup B5, so that's here. And sheet 3, A to B, so the entire columns, and return the second value and match it exactly. All right. Now I'm going to show one place that it's very simple to make them fail. So if we look, we've got our name sort of occurring throughout the entire document. Right? It's going to go through all the columns. for all the rows. So what I'm going to do is just vary this slightly and then show how we can fix it using named ranges. So I'm going to look up B4, but I'm actually going to change that because I'm in a table right now. If you remember, I took this data and I formatted it as a table. Something's going to happen when I click here. It's actually going to look up at customer account, which is nice. So we're no longer referencing a cell. We've got this named column. And I'm going to reference this row, the same, whatever value is under customer account. And that's nice. I'm going to show you where it can work very well and where it could also fail. So if I come here, I'll select this data. We've selected our column of data. We're going to return the second value, and we're going to match exactly. So if I scroll down, I notice it starts failing at some point. And if I look here, the reason it's failing is because, like when you copy an Excel function, the numbers update automatically. So it's adding 1 to this 31 and 1 to this 61 each time. We could fix that by adding dollar signs. So when you add a dollar sign, what you're doing, when you add dollar signs, is you're telling let me just show something a little simpler. You're telling the system not to update based on dragging data. So if I have a value here of 2, and I want to say this is going to equal F2, so that's cell, plus 2, which would be 4, that's fine. And we can, drag it down and it's not going to work. This is going to equal F3, so on. We want this to be our parameter. So we can put a dollar sign in front of the row here. And when I drag this, it's going to maintain that even after I drag it. Now the other way to do it, and we kind of saw a little bit with that table, is to name this range or name this cell. So right now it's G2, and that's what we see up here. But we can actually take that G2 and call it our fixed variable. And we can say this is actually going to equal fixed variable plus 2. So it's pretty neat. It'd be really great, if it maintains when you drag it around. And if you've got like an input where the user is typing in a certain number of values, it's easy for them to see how the formula is working. So we'll go back here. And so we'll show that. So we're showing that sort of same thing here with a table, where it's pulling a name, not necessarily a specific reference to a cell value. So if I go here, treat this as a table now. I'm able, for my Vlookup functionality, to reference a table. So we're looking up at customer account. And when I come over here, it's going to show me that I'm selecting table 2. I can return column 2 and do that default, so it finds an exact value. That way I don't have to select both columns, because that is a little bit clunky. But I also don't have to worry about adding rows here. So if I select table 2, you can see it selects this whole data set. What's nice about this, so if I insert a table column to the right, and I would call this maybe payment terms, my name range automatically picks up that data. So when I come over here, I don't need to, and this is very useful for pivot tables, because I'm referencing a name range and not cells, it already knows that table 2 has a new column now. So I can just tell it to look at column 3 if I want to look up the payment terms of that customer. So I'll start off doing if statements with an if error. This is really nice when you're working with new data or you're taking data from an old system into a new system. You use this a lot where you've uploaded all your sales accounts and maybe one of those accounts doesn't exist. So this would be your customer master. We uploaded all the sales information, but we need to figure out which of these customer accounts don't exist on this table right here. So go ahead and delete this first one. Should I do? I'm still finding that value even though I just deleted it. Oh, it's right here. There we go. So that's what I expected to see. So we get an error, and what we can do is, now we can do if error. So we're going to leave our same function in there, and when it returns an error, we're going to have it do something else. We can have it say value not found, something like a pricing sheet. This would be good if you've got items where you want to set up a pricing sheet and you have certain items that don't have pricing. Maybe you set up a default price. It's very good for defaults if you want something to default to one value, and if it's not there, display something else. So now we've got value not found. We can filter on that. And we can show all the cases where some data is missing. You can't filter just on error, but it's nice to sort of understand sometimes what's missing. You can have different display messages. You can have different defaults, things like that. All right. And whoever's still out there, feel free to ask questions. Even if it's It barely relates to what we're covering today. Like I said, this is for you, so feel free to use that GoToWebinar and type in questions if you have them. We can cover really whatever you want us to. Okay. So we'll look at using, I guess, an if-then statement. So we used an if there, so value if there's an error. So if this value returns an error, then do this. And that's really what an if statement is. So we have our value 1, 3, and value 2, be 5. And we can say if this is greater than 4, return this true. So that is D2, 3 is not greater than 4. So value true. We can return strings here. Strings, I mean text, by putting it in text marks. So true or false. We can also do functions, so we don't have to return just return D3, so we'll return 5 if it's greater than, and if it's false, we can return 4. So D2 is greater than 4. We can also use cells within both forms of logic. So if D2 is greater than D3, we return true, false. So there, if D2 is greater than D3, oh, that's false, we change it to 6, we've got true. And like I said before, we can nest these. So do a very sort of bad way of finding the highest value, just to show off the functionality. 3, 5, 7. So if so we need to specify a few. If D3 2 is greater than 3. So if D2 is greater than D3, I'm also going to only check. So if that's true, then the new check is D if D2 is greater than D4. So what I'm doing there is D2 is greater than D3, I need to also check, so that's true, and I will check is D2 greater than D4. If D2 is greater, that means it's the largest number, we're going to return that. If it's not, then I can return D4, because we already checked that D2 is greater than D3. And if it's okay, there's if it's true. So if it's false, what I'm going to need to check is compare D2 and D3. So if D3 is greater than D4, that means D3 is the biggest. It's not, D4 is the biggest. Okay. So that's a very poor way of doing it. You wouldn't want to do it that way. But it does show a proof of concept of being able to nest if statements. So look at this on D2 is greater than D3. We're going to compare the next two values. If it's not, we're going to compare the other two values and then print that out. So that is sort of your if statements. We went over the Vlookup function as well. We showed really how you can use named ranges, which are really nice to use. So if we name this value 1, this formula could be a lot easier to read if we replaced it all with value 1. It's going to work just as well. But it's the formula is easier to read for the user. If you get into some of the stuff, when we look at pivot tables, named ranges are really nice because you don't have to reselect your data source. Any other formulas that if somebody has any that they want to use, they don't know if a formula exists to do it, just let me know. Ask the question and I'll do my best to try to answer it. There's a lot of formulas in Excel and nobody knows them all, but I'll do my best. All right, so those are some of the functions and how to use named ranges in them. Next, we'll look at taking that data. We've got that one sheet of data and sort of manipulating it with pivot tables. I think when you think of Excel, I think the ability to use pivot tables and a Vlookup function, usually that next step a lot of people are looking to take. Most people can maneuver around fairly well. They understand cell references and doing sort of filters and that type of stuff, but they want to take it to that next step. It's not really that complicated, but it is nice to know, and it's a nice skill set to have. All right, so let's move our filters here. And so we've got some dates here for the sales. We've got an amount, so we've got some good stuff here that we can play around with. So what I'm going to do is, to create a pivot table, you want to select data. I want to select that subtotal. So we're going to go to Insert and Pivot Table. See what's really nice right here is this table or range. I'll go ahead and create two real quick. It's not going to take long. I'll create one with a table, a range of table 1. So we'll call this a table data source pivot table. And we'll do one where we just select cell references. So let's see if we can get it to ignore. Just skip the last row so it doesn't automatically do that. So we're selecting almost the same data, we're just skipping this last row. But you can see here our reference is based on cell values. So if we want to update this table, it's not going to behave quite as nicely. So if we want to add columns or rows, what you have to do normally is come in here and go to your design and change your data source. So you have to do that every time you have rows or every time you have columns. But if you're copying in data, you can actually copy in information to the bottom of this table. And it updates that. So now your pivot table is still going to be fairly up to date. I don't have to change my data source. I don't have to worry about rows being added. extra information getting in there that doesn't show up. So it's a really nice feature to have, and it sort of goes back to the named ranges versus cell references. So we've got a few different things with pivot tables we can go over the next couple minutes. And I guess we'll just start creating one. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take the customer account and drag that to our rows. So I've got a row for every customer account. And under values, I'm going to put our sales amount. So now we've got a sum of sales amount per customer with our total at the bottom. It's really nice to be able to do. The other thing we could do is, so this is how much we've sold each customer. What if we want to know how often they order? Well, the customer account exists on every field, so we know we've got count. So we change this here, our field value settings. So what we're doing is we're selecting count. You can't really sum up an account number, but you could think of things like, we could actually just take our sales amount and just count these. So we can actually just show a count of sales amount. Or we could show the average sales amount per customer. All right. And now if we'd like to see a timeline, remember we had a sales date. So we can take columns and put that sales date here. Right, it's going to go ahead and automatically split this up. And you can take it further if you want to. You can filter even more finite, or just leave it collapsed. Speaking of collapse, there's the collapse field. So we can choose that to collapse or expand it. So this would show a timeline. The other way we could do it is move this here. And this way we can look at month based on sales date, and collapse this field. So if you want to look up an individual customer, you can come and expand it. One last thing I'll show off in Excel is conditional formatting. So we'll say the budget is $100 for spending limits. So we can do different formatting options based on the values in the cell. So what we're going to do is anything that's over budget or over our spending limit of $100, we're going to have a light red fill with dark red text. I did that really just to only that one cell to show the format painter. So I don't know if most people know about this. It exists everywhere. You can do it one of two ways. You can click it single and copy that to a single cell. Actually, let's less than. So anything that's less than the budget. Okay, green. So if I do my format painter, let's select. So what it did is it copies that conditional formatting as well as all other formatting. So if it's big font, copy that. I can also double click it and it's going to maintain the format painter. Or I could have just dragged them, since it was only a single column, I could have dragged and just selected cells. I got deselected, so I selected that one. So you can manage the different rules, the different values. So we don't actually have to, we wouldn't have to copy that format. We can just change these rules to apply to different things. And we can edit the rules, really get fancy with the different formattings. It's like that. All right. So that was really what I was, I guess one last quick thing. We've got a few minutes left. Data validation with an in-cell dropdown, which is nice. Let's do animals, dog, cat, mouse. Keep best practice. We'll format this as a table. Oops. Format this as a table. Then we will have our and we'll put some data validation on these cells. So what we can do is only allow certain values. And we get an in-cell dropdown. And if we try to enter something that's not there, it's not going to allow for it. Let me see if we can work. It doesn't want that table. Okay, so that's sort of using some of the data functionality around pivot tables, and then also some different formatting and user interface options you have with different data in Excel. So if there aren't any more questions, I think that is going to about wrap up the presentation. Upcoming events. If you're ready to take Excel beyond this, I'm giving a webinar next Wednesday over Excel macros. And so what that is that's usually people's first introduction into essentially coding, computer programming. We'll be using VBA, and if a function doesn't exist in Excel, you can actually write it yourself. You can add buttons, different things like that. So that will be nice. We've got some more upcoming webinars, as you see, over different data, whether it be BI, AX, or CRM. We'll be at the AXUG in Chicago and the Summit in Orlando. And I think that is going to just about wrap up our webinar. you've got some data needs, we have a full BI team here. We can help with any system, whether it be Microsoft-based, whether it be integration with something that's non-Microsoft-based. So thank you for your time. No more questions. I'm going to go ahead and end this webinar.